This is April Federico with Brownies for Breakfast, and today we have Allison Guilbault. And this podcast is dedicated to igniting the flames of empowerment in your life. Hosted by me, April Federico, who, like you, has overcome challenges and achieved remarkable success. This podcast is your go-to source for uplifting stories, valuable insights, and actionable strategies that will fuel your journey towards personal and professional empowerment. So, Allison is a licensed therapist and empowerment mindset coach. Her mission is to help anxious women ditch doubt, say goodbye to guilt, reconnect to their inherent worth, and learn to hustle with passion. And she is also the proud founder of Mindful Mental Health. Could you tell us a bit about your journey?
Yeah, so I have been involved in psychology and mental health pretty much since I was a teenager. I was fascinated by it even as like a little tot. So it was really natural for me to become a therapist. I knew I wanted to do that my whole life. And so yeah, I went to NYU and at the time I was a double major between psychology and at the time they called it women's studies.
Mm-hmm.
So I was particularly interested in talking to women about empowerment, confidence. I've had a really great career so far to date, and I've been kind of all over the board with different, little different places that I worked. I worked at a jail, I worked at a hospital, I worked all sorts of places. But the thing that major takeaway that I've had over the course of my career is that particularly for women, even the ones that are very highly successful, high achieving, there's so much self-doubt, there's so much insecurities, thinking that they're not enough. So, my mission for the last few years has really just been to, take those ladies and really remind them that they are worthy no matter what they decide in life. They can access their dreams, they can show up and take up space, they can have a voice. So that's what I've been working on the last few years.
How amazing is that? And how amazing are you? Oh my goodness. I've always admired people who work in the mental health field. And what got you so interested in mental health? And especially working with those with criminal history.
Yeah, so honestly, the reason I think, if I can like look back at my life and wonder like what got me started, I suffered from my own mental health issues. So, I'm an 80s and 90s girl. I'm in my 40s now, and back then, they didn't really have a lot of resources on what I was experiencing. Like I remember having one of my first anxiety attacks when I was 16 and actually having to go to the hospital because no one even knew what it was. Like at school, they were just like, maybe she's having a heart attack. We don't know. And I left that experience and they were just like, you had an anxiety attack. Good luck. Like nothing happened in the aftermath, right? There was like no medication management, not even a therapist. So I think, maybe subconsciously I was struggling myself and I was trying to identify ways to heal and kind of by proxy then like developed this career in helping other people achieve what I have ultimately, mostly managed. I like to say I'm still an anxious person, but I have learned to manage my anxiety and not let it like overtake my life. So I started my career and I was mostly working with actually women who were survivors of sexual assaults. And I did that for a long time, really helping them find their safety again and find their empowerment and their confidence again. And I had to go back for a second master's degree. The licensing changed. I had a bit of a detour for my career. I was a private investigator for 10 years. When I returned to the mental health scene, I had to go back for a second master's degree. And when I did that, I really wanted to, I had a different opportunity. I wanted to take it from a different angle. So I started to work with offenders. And, what I learned there is, how much trauma, right? Like the really powerful effects of like when someone has been traumatized themselves and hasn't learned skills, hasn't had resources, it doesn't make them behave and make the best decisions. So that was a fundamental juncture in my career where I really learned a lot about trauma, which is one of my specialties. So my three specialties, I do anxiety and trauma and sex and intimacy.
That's amazing. Wow. Yeah, I worked in Title IX myself, so I
Yeah.
honestly get the whole nine yards.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious. One of your expert topics is gender fluidity. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so one of it wasn't even a specialty that I sought to have. I just started to work with a lot of trans and queer clients,
Hmm.
and sort of by nature of word of mouth, I had a lot of people just coming to me, and I did, like I said, I was did a women's studies program, which now is more appropriately called gender studies. Um, Something that I learned there is just how fluid both our sexual identity and our gender identity can be. And, we get kind of boxed into these, boxes. Like, what are we? Right. Like, we come out of the womb, we're born into the world, and like the world tells us we're supposed to be a lot of things. And the truth is, like, most of us on all sorts of planes are just very, very fluid. And so I speak pretty publicly on gender identity just because I think it's something that doesn't often get talked about. Obviously, it's in mainstream news now, but there's still a lot of misinformation around it. The idea that someone could be non-binary is confusing for a lot of people. So yeah, I talk a lot about just the idea that, you can be a female and really have masculine traits, right? And you can
Yeah.
be a male and want to wear nail polish, right? Like, your
Mhm.
gender identity really is your self-expression. So you get to pick it, right? And that's part of confidence and empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with every single point you say. And it's almost comical because I started reading this book and it's called The Four Agreements.
Mm,
I forget who it's by. But they talk a little bit about we're born into this world, we're given this identity, we're given a name. Like we don't even get to choose our names.
mhm.
And it's like with those of us with mental illness, it's like we don't get to choose um like if we have mental illness or not. I mean, I remember when I first started college, I thought like, okay, my depression is gone because I'm out of high school, like, and because like senior year for me was a living hell, to put it bluntly. And so I immediately just thought like, okay, my depression's gone. And I've had like friends tell me like, you know what, April, it does not go away. And yeah, so it's really interesting that you bring that up because it's almost a shame that we don't get to choose what happens to us.
Sure.
However, we are who we become,
Yes.
who we choose to become. And you actually took all of your experiences, including that anxiety attack that you had when you were 16, and you made a career out of it. And if you could tell anyone who is pursuing a career in mental health or counseling, what would you say?
Ooh, great question. I mean, one, I would say keep going and like trying a bunch of different hats. Something that I have discovered in my career that I'm actually redefining right now is
Hmm.
that there's a really prescribed way that people think someone's supposed to get involved into mental health, right? So it's like they go for psychology and they either work in an agency or a private practice, but it's sort of like, you go through a psychology training and then you're sitting one-to-one with clients. And what I've actually learned is I think my greater influence on mental health is doing stuff like talking to you, right? So you don't need to necessarily talk one to one or like be that particular role. There's so much conversation around mental health right now. So
Hmm.
like get involved. So, on my current agenda, I'm starting my own podcast. It launches in a few weeks. I appear on podcasts. I do public speaking. I go to schools. I donate my time. I do free sessions. I'm writing a book, right? Like the more we can put out and normalize, the idea that it's okay to have mental struggles. Life is really difficult. We endure trauma. We endure anxiety, and like that's part of the human experience. The more that conversation gets out into the world, there less people like you and I will be struggling in high school, right? So, that's been some of my advice is just, you can play with the message that you have. It doesn't have to just be like this one-to-one, I'm your therapist, let me talk to you. The other quick thing I would say is I'm typically full, like I have a very full caseload pretty consistently. And I think the reason that I do that is because I talk to my clients exactly like I'm talking to you. I'm not very sterile. I'm not sitting there being like, how does that make you feel? right? We're just having a nice, fluid, natural conversation. And I think that, it doesn't have to be so quote unquote professional, that as long as you're relating as human beings, right? Keeping it confidential, keeping it non-judgmental, it like lots of healing can happen in that space. It doesn't have to look so sterile.
Exactly. Yeah, it takes a certain amount of empathy, I think, to be a therapist and to definitely be who you are as a therapist. And I wanted to ask you, in a broader sense, like what does self-love mean to you?
Great question. Ooh, it's funny. As much as self-work I've done, I don't even think that anyone's ever asked me that in that way. Uh, I think it's taking care of yourself and really like I like the term taking up space. And the reason that I often use it that way is because again, I think this happens in all sorts of, cultures, but for sure for women, like we have a really tough time showing up, right? I'll give a little example. I once was working at, my office when I was back in person, and I decided to compliment every single woman who walked through the door. And every one of them, 100% of them, all negated the compliment. So when something like this, oh my God, Sally, your hair looks so cute. Oh my God, I didn't even wash it today. Right? Like, oh, I love your shirt. Oh my God, no, this is just from like, it's a hand-me-down. Right? And the way of just reducing ourselves, I think becomes really conditioned. So to me, part of self-love is like allowing you to like yourself, right? It's allowing you to say thank you to a compliment and to see that people see you and to see yourself. I think that's like a huge part of like learning to love ourselves.
I agree completely. Wow, that's such a powerful example that you gave right there. Like women negating themselves. Wow. It's sad that we've come to that point in our society and as women. I mean, we're conditioned to think that like, oh, we're not good enough to do this, and that. Because maybe it's because of our upbringing, maybe it's because of the trauma that we went through in our adolescence. And I know I've had like similar experience to that where I'm just like, oh, I'm not pretty. Like, why would you say that? And and the next question I have for you in regards to self-love is how do we get ourselves to like ourselves or love ourselves even more?
Yeah, something that I work on with clients is what we just call a self-compassion. And,
Mhm.
believe it or not, a lot of people don't really understand that concept. So, self-esteem, self-confidence is usually like how we like ourselves, but self-compassion is how we speak to ourselves.
Exactly.
And, I spend a lot of time helping all clients, right, really understand what they're saying to themselves.
Hmm.
Because, I'm such a brain nerd, like I love brain stuff, but I've learned enough about brain energy, right, neuro pathways, that the more you think something, the more automatic it becomes. Right. So an example I give is, you're driving from your house to your best friend's house, work, wherever you go regularly. You don't really think about it, right? Like it's just an automatic drive. That's because your brain is hardwired to just remember how to do things that you've done repetitively.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that works the same way with our thoughts. So if you've been saying something like, I'm not pretty, I'm too fat, I'm too old, I can't do this, you don't even realize how much it's influencing like behind the scenes. So with clients, I'll have them like try to really become aware, like mindfulness training, right? Like become aware of your thoughts and then redirect it. Right. And as cheesy as it sounds, everyone hates it. I tell them to practice mantras, right? I tell them, listen, call it a mantra, call it an affirmation, call it a neural pathway. It's all saying the same thing, but there is science, spirituality, psychology, all research points to the more we tell ourselves nice things, the more we start to believe them. So there's a little bit of like a fake it till you make it mentality.
Yeah.
I don't need you to write, I love myself on the mirror. If that's your jam, do it. But it doesn't have to look like that, and I usually encourage them to do it like when they're doing something routine. So I say like, you brush your teeth every day, hopefully. When you're brushing your teeth, just say literally anything nice. It doesn't even have to, you don't even have to believe it, right? I am capable, I am beautiful, I am unique, I can do it. And for me, some of my mantras are just like my anxiety lies, right? Like, it doesn't even have to be an I sentence. It can just be like, I won't bully my brain. I won't let my brain bully me today. So, that is a really, kind of solution to get to better self-love, better self-care, better deserving of thinking that we deserve that we, can have self-care. So
Yeah.
that's usually that's like my baseline. That's my starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you say that, and it's very timely too because I started saying affirmations more, especially in this like past week. Yeah, past week. We've only been in 2024 for about a week.
Oh
And
my God, already.
I've really started to connect with the affirmations that I say to myself. And one in particular that I excuse me, adopted was everything about my life is easy and perfect. And it's like
Ooh,
you said, fake it till you make it. And it's also about the law of assumption as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, it definitely rewires the brain in a way that you can really get yourself to um speak to yourself in a way that you would want not only others to speak to you and to perceive you, but also to just connect with yourself on a deeper level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's fascinating because you said like it's the way that we rewire our brain, and that's literal. Like that is literally how we rewire our brain. The more that we practice a thought, the more automatic it becomes. And it's like that's if you keep that in mind, it's like you're doing, you're like flexing a muscle, right? You're like building
exactly.
muscle. So yeah, those are beautiful affirmations.
Yeah, and the more you tell yourself things like, "Oh, I'm not pretty," or "Oh, I'm not good enough to do this, this, and that," like that gets sent out into the universe and it gets sent into resultantly our brains because our thoughts genuinely do create our reality.
Absolutely. I believe that through and through. And, sort of an example I give is like, if you don't think that you are valuable in the workplace, if this
Mhm.
beautiful promotion comes up, you're not going to apply,
Mm,
right? Thinking that you're valuable might mean you apply. You might not get the job, but at least it better positions you to get the job. You're not going to get the opportunity that you didn't take. And we can see this in sports where if someone goes up to bat, statistically speaking, if they say, I'm going to hit this ball, they're more likely to hit the ball than if they go up and they say, I'm going to strike out. Right. So it does show that, our mindset does actually influence what happens in our lives. Right.
exactly.
So I can't control whether I get a job necessarily. I can't control whether I think I can get a job.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't stress that enough either. Um, so did you ever think you would be where you are now with the successful business, the whole nine yards?
No, like, oh my God, no. And, I have a decent social media presence, and I'm almost constantly saying the same thing over and over again to the point I'm almost wondering like, is this overkill here? But the thing that I say obsessively is like, look, if I can do it, anyone can do it. 10 years ago, I was working 3 jobs, right? My anxiety was constantly telling me I wasn't good enough. So I was overworking everywhere. I had terrible boundaries. I didn't know how to say no. I was hustling, hustling, hustling without any drive, without any passion. I was burnt out. And now, like, I own my own business. I work for myself. I have a full caseload. I got married at age 40. I bought my house at 41. I travel the world. I'm at like 24 countries in the last 10 years. So it's like, I have 2 beautiful dogs and a cat, right? So, if you want things in life, I don't think that manifestation is as simple as like, I think it and it shall happen, right? It does require work. But if you
Mm,
believe that you are capable and you are patient, flexible, creative, right, you can absolutely accomplish what you want to accomplish in this life, whatever it is that looks like, whether you're opening an Etsy shop, having a family, both, running a farm, it doesn't matter, like limitless possibility. And so, I'm sort of like, look, I know, I promise you can do this because I did it. And 10 years ago, if I had a little crystal ball and could see where I am today, that version of me never would have believed it. So I'm glad I had support and worked through, all those doubts and let them go myself because, I feel unstoppable now. So
yeah, that's amazing. Unstoppable is such a powerful word. Yeah, I'm really glad that you use that. And it really goes to show how far a person can come in the course of, their entire life. And where do you see yourself in 3 years?
Ooh, on Oprah. No, this is that's my ultimate goal. I've been saying this since I was like a child. I'm like, one day I will meet. Oh, where I see myself, I'm writing a book. So, that's going really well. And I hope that I can, based on the messaging that we're talking about now, how to reclaim space, how to really show up with confidence. So 3 years from now, I hope I'm doing the same thing, just with a bigger platform, because, believe it or not, I think that there's loads and loads and loads of people out there that need to be reminded and, handheld that like they're worth it too, and they can do this stuff as well. So yeah, that's where I hope I am, kind of more of the same but bigger.
Amazing. And you never know, you could be on Oprah.
You know what? See, from my mouth to the universe's ears.
You never know. Okay. So where can my listeners find you?
Yeah, so I am on the gram, on the Instagram. My handle is a note from your therapist. Same on TikTok. I think Facebook is a note from therapy, and my website is www.anotefromyourtherapist.com. My podcast launches next month, conveniently called Becoming Unstoppable. So yeah, that's where to find me.
Amazing. Well, it was such a pleasure to have you on my show. I hope to have you back on here again.
Absolutely.
Um, just to um just to remind my listeners that, we are beautiful. We are capable. We are amazing, for the
Yes,
lack of a better word.
that's the perfect word.
Yeah, and yeah, so without further ado, this has been another episode of Brownies for Breakfast, and we'll see you next time.
So
Bye.
much.